Hello, so I've read 15 books in January, and I want to go through the books that I read and let you know what I thought. And this is in order that I read them, or at least finished them. So the first book that I finished this year was Mozart in the Jungle. This is it's kind of the show that came out a couple years ago was sort of based on this book, not really. I loved that show, so I got the book, and I thought it was fiction. It's actually nonfiction. And I did enjoy the book. It was kind of a tell-all about the music industry, what life is as a musician, and performing in Broadway shows, performing in orchestras, and I got a lot out of it. It's more of a history memoir, and I can see myself reading this again, especially since my son is interested in a musical career. Possibly. So this is good to kind of know what you're getting into. So I do plan to reread this book again at some point. Next book I finished this year was Poems to See By. This is a book I got for Christmas, and it's a graphic novel of famous poetry, and I really enjoyed it. I'm trying to get into poetry right now and kind of teach myself to enjoy and understand poetry. So this was kind of a easy, fun way to do that. There's a lot of poems I've read before and a lot of poems I never heard of, and they're all beautifully illustrated, so that kind of helps understand them a little better. The next book I read was Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. This is a young adult book. I did not like this book. I felt that the main character was too immature, and I was mostly irritated. He was supposed to be 18, but he acted more like a 12-year-old. And I love the story. The story was great, but I don't see any value in keeping this book for myself. If my kids ever want to read it, they can get it from the library. But this is not one that I would tell them to go read because it's amazing. So I'm just going to get rid of it. The next book I read was A Life on Our Planet. This book was wonderful. This was kind of my first introduction to climate change and farming science, and I really loved it. It was a really quick book, and it was just beautifully written and beautifully presented. So I highly recommend that. I'm excited to read more books on climate change after that. This is My Own Words, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I thought I was reading her memoir, but this is a collection of speeches and writings and court documents, her dissents, and it was a lot more technical than I expected, so I do plan to reread this book. It's a lot of speeches and interviews and various writings. So some of it was wonderful and exciting and emotional, and other things were extremely dry. So I'm definitely going to reread this for the technical aspect. But I do kind of wish I could get a copy of her memoir and read that as well. Next one is a graphic novel, A Wrinkle in Time. I got this for my kids, and I read this with them a couple years ago, and they just were not that into it. So maybe we could try it again. But I read it myself, and I did enjoy it. I enjoyed it a lot more than the book. I liked the way that the artist kind of presented everything. I read Legend, and I really like this book. It's young adult science fiction, and it was fun. I'm going to keep this one. It was kind of my guilty pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Another book I read was Guards by Terry Pratchett. Been trying to get into this book for a while. Finally got through it. I loved it. It was brilliant. It was not easy at all. I don't think Terry Pratchett is an easy writer. He's kind of difficult. You have to approach this as more of a classic than just a quick read. So I've read other books by him that I just did not understand. So this one taught me to just slow down, read the footnotes, reread passages, go back and reread chapters, because he is brilliant, and the way he kind of puts everything together was very, very impressive. I read What I Talk About When I Talk About Running. I read his book, Kafka on the Shore, and I liked it. So I wanted to read his memoir, and it was mostly just about running and a little bit about books and writing, but mostly about running, and I just don't think I'm going to reread this. I'm going to get rid of this one. Finally finished Stranger in a Strange Land, and I kind of hated it. I mean, it was okay. It's such a classic. It's a kind of a must-read classic. And it was very misogynistic. The theories it presented were kind of annoying, and I did not grok them at all. But I did it. I read it. I finished it. I can say I read it. I've read this classic. I understand all the references. Yay. And I'm getting rid of it. I read this incredible book. Killers of the Flower Moon. I have not watched the movie because I'm scared of violence, but the book was absolutely incredible. Highly recommend this. I'm excited to reread this. What a wonderful book. This was just so inspirational. Another incredible work that I read was Trust. This one won the Pulitzer Prize last year, and this may be one of my favorite books of all time. I just am obsessed. I've been telling everyone how much I love this one. It's told in various perspectives. The story is told as a novel, then it's told as a biography, then as a memoir, and then as journal entries. And it kind of follows the unreliable narrative theme. And I don't want to spoil it, but could not put this one down. One of the best books I've ever read. I read Freezing Order by Bill Browder. I loved his Red Notice, which I read a couple years ago. This is the sequel. What a fun book. This is all true. It's like a real thriller of how he was battling Vladimir Putin and through the courts and through the media. And it was wonderful. I loved it. I mean, he's not the best writer, but the way he tells the story is really good. I would take this over John Grisham. I read this book. This I'm not sure if this is young adult or this is adult, but it kind of felt a bit like a young adult coming of age story. I really, really, really like this. I got this directly from the publisher, and I read it all within one day. But it was sad. It was sad, and it made me cry, and it was a little traumatic. And it was beautiful, beautifully written, excellent story. If I'm going to read it again, I'm going to listen to the audiobook because it's not complicated. I don't need to annotate it or highlight it. So I'm going to pass this book on to somebody else who can enjoy it. But I'm trying to keep the fiction books I'm trying to keep the really complicated ones that I'm going to need to highlight and annotate. Because I enjoy literary theory. Another great book I read was Vacationland. I love John Hodgman. He is hilarious. He is one of my favorite comedy writers. And this was so much fun. I mean, it's sad, but it's also just hysterically funny. So that's my 15 books.